All right, peace. This was kind of a last minute thing. Wanted to cover some material, so we're just gonna wait till we get a couple of people up in the room. Like I said, this was last minute. Didn't even really plan on doing this, but I just figured we get a. All right, we're just gonna. Peace and greetings. Just give me a second. All right, like I said, this was something I just decided to do last minute. Some material I figured I'd get in because there's some other stuff I want to get through in this Ascetian Bible. So I figured I'd get one in, a small portion I kind of want to go through this evening to kind of get out of the way. I just think it would be good because it ties in. Now, obviously, as we know, yesterday being what they call Halloween and all that good shit, and people giving their false breakdowns on it. You know, you get the religious breakdown, obviously, the spooky conscious coon breakdown on it. How the rhetoric Halloween is evil and it's the day of the devil, and all the religious spiritual ignorance that you get on it. Today, which I think is fitting because today is what they call All Souls Day, right? Or the day after All Souls Day. The day after Halloween was quote unquote All Souls Day. Today, those last 2 days. For a black adept, a black magician, somebody that practices sorcery, the dark arts, we know there's a high spiritual time because of the type of energy that can be tapped into. Now, it goes back to many different traditions. You could trace it back to different breakdowns of it in different cultures. But in general, when we work with, quote unquote, the death current on this path or contacting certain spirits or entities, and the reason why I had titled this video, what I titled it, Darkness, Chaos, Heka, and the Dark Flame, as what they refer to it in the Ascetian Bible, is really the black flame, what we know. And when I stumbled across it, I said, let's build on this and break it down in depth, because it shows you how a lot of these spiritual systems are all kind of in line with each other, okay? So again, peace and greetings to everybody. Like I said, I did send a last minute notification out. Like I said, this wasn't originally something I planned. So peace to everybody in the room that's here. Pete, Brother Jack, Kendrick, Ed Brown, Mama Muerte, peace. Brother Duma, aka Brother Duma, peace. Ammon Blackstone. So I got a very short piece I want to go through here. It's just a couple of pages, and then I want to kind of build. Let's get some questions on this, because the unique thing, and I said this last week, and again, I want to make sure everybody's clear. For the last couple of feeds, I've been suggesting people get this book. As I said a few weeks back on the first video that we did on this, matter of fact, Brother Duma, who's in here right now, a couple months ago brought this book to my attention a few months back. And he reminded me when I had seen the book, there's another book that this guy wrote, the Orion, the Orion thing that I had stumbled across. I gotta get the name of that. And I was meaning to get that book also. He had brought this book to my attention, and I remember seeing the Orion, I think it's Liber Orion, it's called, if I'm not mistaken, by the same author. And he had brought this book to my attention and told me that, I had gotten this book, you should check it out. So I went and got it. And the thing that's unique about it, it goes into a lot of different areas of spirituality, even though it's centered and themed around ancient Egyptian principles. In my estimation and reading and studying the book, I think it offers more in a lot of different areas of spirituality, touches on a lot of areas of spirituality. So there's a section in here literally titled what I titled the video that I'm going to go through. And again, the author is Luis Marquez, Marquez. And again, recommended you go on Barnes and Noble. If you do not have the book, go on Barnes and Noble and get it. Because as I said before, and was brought to my attention, it's $25 on Barnes and Noble. Amazon does have it, but they're selling it for a ridiculous price, as I said before. But you can find that out for yourself. So again, I would hope the last couple of days people work some spiritual magic, especially if you work with the death current, if you work with necromancy, if you work with vampirism, if you work with some of the voodoo traditions of summoning in the gay day, the spirits of the dead, things of that nature. These last few days were high times to work that. I know I did some work with voodoo the last couple of days, getting ready to finish something up actually tomorrow with Papa Legba. When you're able to tap into that current, now remember, when we say that this time of the year, regardless of where you are, in the States, out of the States, we're talking about planetary movements and ships. And this time of the year, there's a heightened sense of spirituality that you can tap into during these times. Now, if you tap in astrology, movement of the planets, if you time your work for that, it could be very effective. And as I've said before in the past, not mandatory. I'm not saying it's mandatory, but it is a proven fact that can enhance your work. I've mentioned before in the past that when you're doing some of this work, some people have a natural inclination or a feeling or a vibe where under certain astrological signs, they seem to be more productive. I know, for an example, when the moon is in Scorpio, that's a time, as I've mentioned before in the past, I don't really do a lot of work because it's a stagnated type of energy. It's not a sign where you can bring about great change working your magic. Now, as I said before, having said that, I want to make this clear. Remember, in any critical situation, regardless of the time, place, astrological sign, etc., a powerful adept has the ability to work okay, that's Mandy, Mama Muerte. Okay, I got your piece. Like the name change, the name change. Suits you. In any period, you have the ability and power to work when need be. But I'm saying when you're able to plan and time your work, it's always good if you can connect it with certain signs. So we're in an energy current right now that deals with death. Why? We're in the peak of fall season, right? When you deal with the equinoxes, right? This is a time where things kind of, leaves are shed. It deals with really deconstruction and reconstruction. So I'm pointing that out because these next couple of months, you should be really working hard on deconstructing or destroying certain things about yourself. Oh, Papa Nieves, Brother Dave. Okay, cool. You should definitely be working on things to destroy about yourself that is kind of holding you back. And the last ritual we did last week kind of had aspects of that because there's always that deconstruction, reconstruction aspect. So these next couple of months going into the new year, that's the energy you should really be focusing on because the current is out there. If you're dealing with the microcosm, macrocosm, your connection, the physical connection to the spiritual connection, the human connection to the earth, to the nature connection, all that shit is strong right now. And you definitely should be able to adjust workings and rituals and plan things now geared around that. What do I mean? If there's certain habits right now you've been struggling to fix about yourself, now would be the good time to plan ritualistic work around that. And you can incorporate archetypes that deal with that type of work. For an example, road opener archetypes are great to work with right now. So, Santa Muerte, the Holy Death, Papa Legba, Anpu / Anubis, any of those, roadway clearing, road opening energies can be invoked at this point to basically clear paths, right? If you are struggling right now, say even with finances, this is a great time to change your financial situation, and focus on that. If it's personal stuff, anything to bring about great change, because we're going into change in the sense of things you're trying to shed. I want to make that clear. Not saying you can't draw stuff into you, but you should focus on things you're trying to remove and bring about a change or metamorphosize in that area of your life for change. Because remember, this path is about working. The reason why we work magic again and do rituals is to make ourselves the most, strongest, intelligent, powerful, wise person we can become. That's the objective. That's the goal. That's what you should be focusing on. Like I said, with these last couple days, being, what they call Halloween and All Souls Day, that current has now officially kicked in. And I know this time of the year for the last several years or longer, I work on areas like that. Now, this is just my suggestion. I'm not telling you have to do this. I'm not saying it's mandatory, but it would be a good idea to look in those areas. All right. So what I want to do, I got a real short section, and looking more forward to taking, hopefully you got some good questions this evening. Looking more forward to dialogue more so than go through material. But I just want to go through some short key principles, because I think the short section that I'm going to go over, I think it's critical. I think it's important. I think it's really going to explain the essence or the foundation, quote unquote, of what this path is about. Remember, the objective last week when we went over the Book of Nun, and I hope people caught that, was as it's talking about that primordial chaos, right? Or primordial energy, dealing with the essence, right? That's what we try to work and tap into, on this path. When you're working your black magic, you're trying to tap into that primordial chaos. What did that primordial chaos represent, as we discussed last week? Well, what it represented last week was, again, and clearly mentioned in this book, and it's something I've been saying on videos for years, way before I read this book. It talks about, no boundaries, no limitations, no beginnings or endings. That's what chaos represents. On the surface, when people hear that word, it can appear to the ignorant as being something negative. No, there's great power in that chaos, because there is no confinements. There is no limitations. It also represents, unlimited potential and capabilities that an individual has the ability to tap into. So this is very important. So this is a good time to go into your inner chaos when you're dealing with things in your life, because of the cycle that we are in. Now, how a black magician, in my experience and dealing with it over the years, there are ways to deal with the equinoxes as far as inner change. We know each equinox represents either, death, or when I say death, destruction, or they'll say going into colder periods or darker periods, growth when you get into the spring, etc. We know what the basic meanings. As I said before, in the fall, one of the best deities to invoke in the fall is Tahuti, right? I mentioned that before, and the color's orange. It's good to work rituals with those orange candles invoking Tahuti, because Tahuti brings that wisdom that's needed to bring about that change, right? One example. It's something that we should get on, because, again, when you have time to plan your work, I want to make this clear again. Not that it's mandatory, because remember, an adept can work magic under any situation, circumstance, or time period. So I want to stress that. But what I'm saying is, when you do have the ability to plan and time your work, because we went over that when we were discussing several times in the past, the Book of Belial, right? When you read the satanic ingredients in the Satanic Bible, how the satanic ingredients, or the ingredients to work black magic. And it stresses in there very critically planning, timing, imagery. That's very important if you can. Now, there are some times where you're pressed against the wall, where you might just have to kick right into action and work your magic. So one must be prepared to do both. So let's go, if you do have the book, let's go through these couple of short sections, just a few pages. I want to go through page 85. I don't have the digital version, so if anybody has the digital version, I can tell you I am in the second chapter, I believe. Yeah, second chapter. No, my bad. Hold on. I'll tell you what chapter it is, just in case you have the digital version. It's chapter 3. My bad. Chapter 3. And I'm going to be on page 85 in the hard copy, but look in chapter 3 for the page that section darkness. All right, let's go through that. Understand, I like the way that this author kind of breaks it down similar to what we've been discussing on this channel for years. All right, another subjective theme under an occultist perspective is the embrace of darkness from the initiate. I've always said from day one, you must embrace the darkness, right? And that doesn't just mean the literal physical darkness. We're not just talking about that. What it's talking about also is, as we go further down, like we mentioned last week, the inner abyss of your subconscious mind, the deep, dark depths of your subconscious mind, bringing everything to the surface that, not that just you're aware of, that you're also unaware of, right? Then it goes on to say the jump into the sphere of that and the confrontation with the Karanazan. Nowadays, it is common to use the definitions, and those are vampiric terms, the act and the confrontation with the Karanazan, or likened to the definitions of the left-hand path and right-hand path, to describe two different and somewhat opposed paths with the myriad of occult traditions available. Now, you're going to understand the reality is when we say left-hand path and right-hand path, the Necrominion book and the works of Charles Pace, when you're really working Heka, and this is why it's beautiful, because this book kind of connects to some of that work. When you're working Heka, you will understand in reality, when I say the degrees of vibration of how magic is worked is separated by light and dark magic, or white and black magic, or right hand, left hand path. But in essence, it's really all the same. It's the ability to really know how to access both vibrational energies and frequencies when need be. The Necrominion book, which I've used sometimes, and I have my plans to get back in that later down the road shortly. When it breaks down the triad of light and darkness, it kind of groups that together. And there's particular work that's done with both, because it really represents the harmony that the Black Adept needs to create within her or himself to be really linked in and connected. It's about creating the harmony. So when we joke around and we, I like to talk shit and just crack jokes. It's just what we point out is when you become too extreme of one or the other, right? The problem is with most right-hand paths, as we said before in the past, they tend to focus too much on the fluffy shit. Everything is the false illusion that you must suppress everything. You must discipline yourself to just resist everything, where the left-hand path is totally opposite. You must embrace everything. You must indulge. You must experience, and then draw your conclusions and come to your decisions of what's right for you and what's wrong for you, or as we like to call, laying out your path to self-mastery. But the adept in that process, as dark magicians, we know when to utilize that energy of what we call, say, the triad of light. I'm using that as an example since we're talking about Egyptian principles. It's just we know how to combine both of those energies, where when one of the, now I'll be honest with you, even quote unquote, and I don't consider them quote unquote full left-hand path. You also have people, quote unquote, in my opinion, who claim to be Satanists, who say they're left-hand path and everything is dark this and gloom this. And that also is incorrect, because that becomes just like a religion, like right-hand path philosophies do. And it's just my opinion. It's not knocking anybody if they're a Satanist. I'm talking about the religious Satanists, in my opinion, where everything is focused on, being the antithesis to Christianity. When your whole focus, and there's a mental fuckery in that, and I mentioned that before in the past, when your whole focus and aim is just to attack or try to disprove, let's say in this case, which most Satanist religions do, Christianity, I'm not saying all, then you're giving just as much life and energy to the quote unquote false illusionary God. And in my opinion, when you're uplifting, a deity that you're looking at Satan, like the Christian monotheist would look at God, you're still feeding into that energy. Now, that's my perspective as a Luciferian, from a Luciferian mindset. Now, as I said before, if you're a type of person that needs, to be aesthetic and you need to focus on something external, and if you look at deity, if you look at the adversary that they call Satan in that light, and that's what you need to get you through, that's your prerogative. I'm just saying, where I stand on it, I wouldn't look at it from that perspective. because I think it puts us back. Well, I know from experience, it puts us back into that slave master mental mindset mentality where we can be sold on everything. Now, I'm not saying everybody. I do know people on this path that do externalize some aspects of this because they get results. And then you know what my next follow-up was. I've always said from day one, if you get results, do whatever you do that works for you. Never ask. The one thing I can't stand is when somebody asks a question, should I be doing this? Knowing already they've gotten results from it. Well, that's your answer. When you got to double and triple check it and ask, should I or should I not? You're actually taking away from your inner power. You understand? Never ask, should I or should I not do something if I got results from it? Now, if it's different if you're asking, you didn't really get results, or you're a little bit confused, that's a different way. That's the time to ask. But when it kills me when somebody emails me and goes, yeah, I did this ritual, such and such, and I got these great results, this and that, and this happened. I was wondering, did I do it right? I mean, what kind of question is that? You already answered the question in your question. Yes, you did it right. And how you know you did it right is simply due to the fact you got the results. And sometimes you got greater results. Now, if you've been at it and you're not getting anything or nothing's happening, and then you're stumped, that's the time to say, well, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Let me see if I can figure it out, talk, dialogue, etc. That's different. All right. All right. So we established that. It is also common to parallel left-hand path and right-hand path with black and white magic. While in fact, true magic knows no color, we just talked about this, nor is it defined by practicing good or evil. That's very important to understand on this path. There is no such thing as good or evil. It's a perspective. The word perspective ties into the word perception, right? Everybody's definition of good and evil is going to vary based on their perception, because if you're not on this path and the things we're talking about right now, to some people that might be religious minded, this sounds quote unquote in their perception and how they're perceiving it as what we're discussing right now as being very evil. And that perception comes from how they were raised, their religious faith and belief, your culture and your nationality and your ethnicity is going to affect your perception. I don't give a fuck what anybody tells you. If they say it doesn't, they're full of shit. All of these things have to be taken into consideration, quote unquote, when somebody is making a statement that this is good or evil. Because when I hear that, I say, well, good and evil based on what? What are you basing that on? Because somebody will say something that I will interpret, and I don't see it, necessarily as being evil. We all make those statements based on our experiences, which defines or strongly enhances our perception on things. So the reality is, what is real truth? Truth is personal. I keep saying that. See, people want to present like there is one absolute universal truth. That is very misleading, because yes, there are basic universal truths like 1 + 1 is 2. I'm just being super basic. But when you're dealing with the subjective, right? Experiences vary based on people's subjective realms. You hear that term? Well, when somebody can't come to an agreement with somebody on a topic or a debate, they say, well, you're being very subjective about it. That's all you can be to a certain extent. Not that you can't, debate and argue things on an objective level. Sure you can. But your subjective is going to come into play at some shape, form, or fashion. And it's not that it's a matter of right or wrong. It just means that those two or group of individuals can't connect on the same level subjectively, because they may not have the same experiences. So therefore, their perception on things are going to vary. This is why you can't debate with certain people on certain topics, because they're just not at that level to the point where their subjective consciousness has been opened. Their experiences are more vast, because you have to understand when an individual per se is locked in religion and they have what we call tunnel vision, and they're not even trying to hear anything outside of that book called the Bible. They don't even want to hear anything that challenges that. And one or two things happens when you present a concept that's going to challenge their faith or belief. They're going to become very defensive. They're going to either, convince themselves and argue and fuss and debate with you, even though you might be smacking them upside the head with the truth. They're not trying to hear it because it's automatic. It's what we call cognitive dissonance, right? Cognitive dissonance is when you're in complete denial, when you're presented with something that's not a truth, but you will still carry on to pretend that what you believe in is a truth. There's a lot of people that suffer from cognitive dissonance. You understand? So that's what I'm not saying all religious people. That's what will happen when you try to argue with people who have tunnel vision. Now, remember, when you're an intelligent person and you're dialoguing with people, you also understand on this path, not everybody is going to see things and agree with the same things that you do. And that's part of the intelligent part of being on this path. So we can agree to disagree and respect that. But when you're going to sit there and try to really cling on to something that holds no validity, now we're dealing with a disease called cognitive dissonance, right? All right, so let's continue on the darkness subject, all right? So that was in relation to the good or evil comments. We got that shit out the way. Those words are only good and evil. Those words are only perspectives. And I just said this. The reason why I like this book, and I'm glad Brother Doomer brought it to my attention, it's like I'm reading this shit, and this is shit I've been going over the last several years before I read it. So I said to myself as I reflected on it, well, maybe when I first saw the book a couple of years ago, or however long ago it was, a year or two ago, maybe I wasn't supposed to get it at that time. You understand? Maybe I just wasn't supposed to come across it. But it's like as I'm going through it now, it's confirming a lot of the things that are being discussed. And that's a beautiful thing. It shows that sequence, that synchronicity, right? So these words are only perspectives, usually from a social or religious point of view. So the concepts of evil are in fact very subjective and are not the guidelines that define the nature of the magic practices. The dark path or left hand is a world of mystical traditions, more empowered by introspection. Remember, going within yourself. Remember, on the left-hand path and being an adept of the black arts, it's an inward journey out, not an outward journey in. We don't remember. Even when you go into Father Sebastian's books on vampirism, right? What is one of the first principles of vampirism? That the adept or the vampire is at the center. When he removes him or herself from the equation, then they are now can fall and get stuck in worshiping false gods. The adept who's on the center of its axis, he or she is the God of the universe, is the controller, or is at the center of control of their axis. We don't worship anything outside of ourselves. This is why I said here from an introspective, we don't acknowledge fictitious deities that don't exist. We're not talking about summons and spirits and demons. That's part of this path. We know the daemon, which is the Greek term of higher self. That's what we mean when we say we access and invoke personal daemons. Whether you're dealing with the Goetia or you're dealing with the 72 companions of Set, it's all the same concept. The point being is we never externally surrender our divinity over to something external. We understand that the adept, he or she, is always the God of their universe. Very important to understand. So we work this, as it says here, from an introspection, within personal evolution and development, usually more connected with the practices of high magic, right? Now be careful because you got a lot of systems out there and they all serve a purpose. Like me, in my opinion, getting initiated at the time and going through Thelema and being initiated in OTO, to me, that would be considered high magic or gray side magic. Some Order of the Golden Dawn stuff, I don't really consider that stuff left-hand path. Some of Crowley's workings and some of his, stuff can be to an extent, maybe some of his sex magic that he has written, in my opinion. But when you look at the Thelema itself, obviously, Crowley was highly influenced by Eastern mysticism. If anybody has ever gone through OTO Lodge and been initiated, you would understand the rituals are geared on Eastern mysticism, centered around a character called Saladin. So he was highly influenced by that, Freemasonry, the Templars. You see it in the degrees. And one thing I thought that was unique about Crowley, Even though some have their opinions on him, that he obviously he had in my opinion, a bizarre mind, not in a really bad way. Some people are deathly afraid of him that are not on this path. It's funny how when his name comes up and amongst religious people, they think he was a devil incarnate. He was different. I think he tapped into a serious portion of the subjective aspect of his consciousness, and he did his best to bring that into his objective and kind of share that with people. But when you, again, look at it, to me, that would be considered gray side magic. Just like, to me, the Order of the Golden Dawn, same thing. I just think that's kind of in between what we would call white magic or black magic. It's kind of in the middle, high magic, as I mentioned here. All right, they are not so conditioned by religious dogma or not static in nature, don't follow strict rules, and always promote self-achievement and personal conquest. On an evolutionary point of view, so it is easily understood that a dark sorcerer, for example, does not implicitly practice evil magic, although he or she can. All right, we'll make that clear. There is that part of this path. With proper knowledge when you're practicing destructive magic. Never should be done just out of, revenge and personal gain. Because if you understand how universal law works, you understand how those energies work. And you must be in the right. When I say in the right, you must be justified. Meaning, simple example, if you are being attacked outright for no reason, or somebody just targeted you, you have all the right in your universes to retaliate however way you see fit. That is a reality on this path. What happens is people don't know how things have to kind of harmonize themselves out, or people say balance themselves out. Meaning, if you do something out of pure revenge, that energy has to be compensated, not in a religious karma way. Because remember, cause and effect is what real karma is. When you go into the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti, go read the principle of cause and effect. If you really want a basic definition of karma and remove all the religious spooky shit, it's basically cause and effect. So you have to really be wise when working that type of magic. What's the cause? Meaning, what's the purpose that's causing you to carry this work out? And do you understand the effect or the responsibility that comes with the effect? If those things line up and they're in harmony, there's your answer. There's your justification. If they don't, then know that effect is going to come back in some shape, form, or fashion. Trust me when I tell you, you ain't got to believe me, because I don't want you to believe a damn thing that I say. You should be able to grasp those things by experiencing them yourself. So I want to be clear on that, all right? All right. It is up to the sorcerer alone. It is up to the sorcerer alone the use he gives to his own knowledge and powers. And that does not define his action as a black or white magician. That is defined by techniques and knowledge he uses as the traditions he follows, and not by the consequences of his mystical practices. And that kind of basically was explaining what I was just talking about, right? And here's a quote that the author has in here from Anton LaVey. On the altar of the devil, up is down, pleasure is pain, darkness is light, slavery is freedom, and madness is sanity. Put that shit into perspective, right? Because remember, that statement might sound crazy, but look at when I was talking about in the beginning of the video, take things, when you're working with, now, not destruction, when you're working with deconstruction, reconstruction, apply that. That's something you can simply visualize and meditate. Apply that concept to deconstructing the things about yourself. Remember, I said this is a good time to break down, do work at these next couple of months to break down and destroy the things about yourself that you feel or know are holding you back from evolving and growing, and reconstruct them. That is one tool we use on the left-hand path in black magic regularly. What do we deconstruct and reconstruct? It's the destruction, creation process, right? We also understand in creation, in order for something to be created, something has to be destroyed. In working with the 9 angles, right? If you're familiar with the 9 angles in the Satanic Bible, right? Understand the 6th angle, right? Focus on stasis, stagnation, death, right? That means many different things. Don't just listen to what it means on the surface. Everybody gets to those points in their spiritual journey where they face that stagnation, right? You might get a point in your studies and your work where you just feel stagnated. there's a certain energy that you're not moving, right? That also represents a state of death. Also, it means where you're leaving one phase or existence or way of life or looking at things, you die that death and you now evolve into a higher level of understanding and learning, right? That's another form of death. Really, if you've never done work with the 9 angles, I suggest you go in there and look at it. It's good work to do for what's going on right now, for the current that's out there right now. That's something I've worked with for the last couple of years off and on. And I forgot when it was. We did it earlier in the year. We did a whole working on the 6th angle, right? We did a whole working on that. We actually took the ritual in the Satanic Bible and we made some adjustments to it, obviously. We made the changes that we saw we needed to make fit to adjust it to the working and the ritual. And you should always do that as an adept. Remember, this is your path to self-mastery. It is not mandatory or you required to copy and perform a ritual identically as it is written in the book. I never suggest anybody to do that. I always say use it as a guideline or a map. Like when I do the workings here on a monthly basis, I pull from different sources. And then I kind of put it together how I see fit, make the changes, change some of the wording, change some of the way it's done. That's what you do as a master on the path to self-mastery. So use the books as the roadmap, the criteria, the guideline, but you should always put your personal flavor and touch on it because that's what makes it personally yours and unique. Because if you perform it the same exact way, what you're really doing, whether you're conscious of it or not, you're actually tapping into the same energy when that individual was performing it. And you want to make sure that that energy is conducive. It might be in line on the surface and in sequence to what you're connecting with or what your theme or intent is, but they might have accessed certain demons or spirits or entities that they may not be conducive for you at that particular moment. That's why it is very important to adjust your work and your rituals in accordance. You should never really copy it exactly word verbatim, not so much just word verbatim, but in the exact same format. I've seen over the years many different creative ways people have changed things and gotten great results. And I've also seen the person that struggles is that individual that's just trying to mimic something to the T. And I'm going to tell you, when you try to mimic something to the T, now, all right, maybe you're somebody out there that has and say, yeah, I've done it to the T, I've gotten results. Well, there's your answer. So I want to make it clear on the whole, I'm going to say for more than 80 to 90% of people don't get the results. Now, if you're one of those few in that small 10%, percentile, then power to you. It works for you. But I want to make it clear. On the whole, it usually doesn't work for the most part. All right. And the last section on darkness. The Ascetians are by themselves creatures of darkness. This is easily seen on many manifestations from their introspective natures, meditative workings, antisocial behaviors, elitist ideologies, magical practices, and above all, their predatory instincts, right? That describes all of us on this path. You should have those characteristics. Vampires easily find different ways to harness their powers and fuel their abilities within the dark energies, right? This is related not only with metaphysical darkness, but also with the physical one, since it is common for vampires to access some of their powers more easily at night and usually have a heightened sensitivity towards the sun and bright light. Many even be weakened during direct sunlight. Now, that part, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't fully agree with that. You got to look at that when you're dealing with your neuromelanin, right? When we say that people that work this path are nocturnal creatures, right? We know that ties in. That's why you see the symbol of the owl prominent in a lot of esoterical orders, because the owl has impeccable vision in the night, right? It's known for its impeccable night vision, right? Remember, regardless of how fair-skinned you are or dark-skinned you are, your neuromelanin is most activated in the midnight hours to dawn. Your spiritual senses are most heightened at those hours, and that's why it's most productive to do work during that period. Is it mandatory? Do you have to do work all the time at that time? No, but you're going to find, and I'm sure people from experience, a lot of people can attest to that. And I do know people that do a lot of dayside work and get results, but you will find that your spiritual powers are more heightened in those hours. I liken that more to that. That's just my experience. Some people might have a difference of a perspective on that, but that's fine. Chaos, right? Short section on chaos. The vampire himself is a representation of chaos. So let's stop there for one quick. Who represents the chaos? You. You are the source and the foundation from all the chaos that manifests in your life. That's a hard fucking pill for some people to swallow. You want to know why? Because most people that are not on this path, when shit goes wrong to them, they're quick to point the finger. They're quick to find something or somebody to blame. They're quick to blame somebody for why they couldn't get something done or failed. But never once, I'm talking about mainstream, do people ever take credit for their fuck ups, right? So this is step one to be successful on this path. You understand that you represent that chaos. So since you are the source, foundation, and the representation of that chaos, you also have the ability to control, master, manipulate, and make that chaos work for you. You are never, ever not in control. I want to make that clear, okay? You are never not in control. Once you start thinking that in here, you start to, one, weaken your inner power and strength. You can open yourself up to being a victim when you're on this path. Literally a victim who can be manipulated and taken advantage of. That's a fact, right? Let's get into this a little more. His own existence promotes change, right? Attracts new energies and repels old ones, breaks stagnation. And many people in contact with Ascetians are almost invariably changed by them, even if it is just on something subtle, right? Chaos takes us into one characteristic of an important Ascetian sacred pillar. Kepri, right? As he describes it in here. Keperu, or as we say, Kepera, right? And we know what the deity Keper or Kepera represents in ancient Egypt. Renewal, rebirth, regeneration, right? We say, and on the left-hand path, sometimes you'll hear the term Keper and remanifest, right? When one is able to apply Keperu to manifest, they're able to remanifest or take something, as I was saying earlier, about yourself that is not correct, that you know needs quote unquote repair, and take it and remanifest it to work for you in accordance where it's going to do something beneficial for you. And that could be things, simple things as a change in attitude, working on your patience, correcting maybe bad habits that you have as far as with money or with food, whatever it might be. That's all aspects of Keper or remanifesting yourself, right? Then it goes on to say, the chaotic forces, is the ancient Egyptian word for transformation. The chaotic forces are one of the most important fuels so that Keperu can manifest, or Kepera. That's why I went over the Book of Nun on the last video, because it talked about the primordial chaos. You also hear the term in certain spiritual circles, primordial energy. The word primordial, again, as I reiterated last week, has root in the word prime or original, right? So when you're talking about the primordial chaos, you're talking about the original essence or energy that makes up everything in what we know as the universe and universes, or multiverses you'll hear in some metaphysical circles, right? That's the ability we have to be able to tap into subjectively to make it a reality on our objective. So we know when we say that primordial chaos, that takes on a significant meaning to an adept on this path, right? Okay, chaos is by itself something indefinable, right? Something that transforms stagnation and gives it motion. So this is why we say that chaos is necessary. It is necessary to have the chaos first before you can have order. You can't have order without chaos. So for those people that get stuck in spiritual systems that promote this illusion of everything being unified and perfect order and peace and love, it's a bunch of bullshit. You spend your whole life chasing a dream and a reality that is just not a reality. It's an illusion, and it brings disappointment. And most of us left those paths because we started seeing the bullshit. We started to see, damn, I can only go this far. Damn, I got so many questions that this shit can't answer. I know there's more to it. Those are for the people that are quote unquote awake from their sleep or slumber. They come out of their mummified state, right? And they come into the realization that shit, there's more to this than I'm being told. This is why a lot of us left Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, all these different dogmas and philosophies. It's not that they didn't serve a purpose, because remember, if you came through any of the aforementioned systems, always reflect that was part of your journey. So don't look at it like, damn, I wish I wasn't never that, or I wish I didn't waste my time. No, That was pertinent for your growth. You were supposed to go through that to get you here. Because how would you not have the experience to know the difference between the two? It's not the same just reading about it. And that's why I tell people indulgence is important, right? We were never told that when we were in them fluffy systems. We were told you need to stay this and don't deviate from it. If you do, you're going to burn up and go to hell and blah, 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 and all that spooky shit they started indoctrinating us with when we were small kids, right? But as some of us grew into real adults and we became wise, we didn't want the fairy tale stories no more. We didn't, talking snakes in the garden, really. Somebody parting, just magically waving a wand and parting the Red Sea. What does this really mean? You know what I mean? What do these stories really represent? They sound like fairy tales and myths, right? So we became conscious or aware. And this is part of regeneration, renewal, right? We shed the old way. We said, I don't want to be this mentally dead religious person no more. I know there's more. So we became motivated to bring about a change, right? That's chaos in motion at all times, right? Because it says here, there's no way to define it. Chaos is what fuels and keeps you motivated. Without chaos, you become stagnated. You become tunnel vision. You become all those things that you're trying to avoid, right? Watch this. It continues, right? We left off with chaos is indefinable, something that transforms stagnation and gives it to motion. It is the engine itself for change and evolution. The absence of chaotic energies implies a stagnation of the individual. I just said that. Nothing compels him to adapt and evolve. So when you become stagnated, you get comfortable, right? You get in your comfort zone. And the worst thing I tell people you can do on this path is get comfortable, right? I did a video a couple of months back. The diversity, the vastness and diversity of this path. You must be very vast and diverse on this path. If you start getting comfortable doing one thing and you get stuck on it, you need to really motivate yourself to do other things, because I've watched that happen to people. They like something. Now, I mentioned this before many times in the past. There are going to be some things you like more than others. That's human nature. That's just natural being a human fucking being. So yeah, you will find there's more things you like to practice than others, and that's okay. But be careful that you don't get trapped in the exclusivity club, as I like to call it, where you just become one thing. That's what this is talking about. Now nothing is going to compel you or motivate you, because you start to become religious minded in nature. You're not really conscious of it, but you become no different than the regular Christian, Muslim, or Jew that just goes through the routine of their religion. Week in, day in and day out, week in and week out, month after month, year after year. And that brings in pure stagnation, or what one of the aspects of the sixth angle represents, right? It says, nothing compels him to adapt and evolve. He is not tested against adversities and his own personal limits. So there's no interchange that we call Kepler. What brings about interchange? Challenging yourself. Okay? People, what brings this interchange? If you're not challenging yourself, how's change going to come about? If you're not dabbling in areas where you're weak, right? That's challenging yourself. Taking on a task where you know you're not good at. That's a challenge. And what is that going to do? As it says here, you're going against adversities. Adversities are things that are adverse to your personal self. But when you overcome and challenge them, in that challenging them and overcoming them becomes change and growth. So how are you going to grow at anything in life if you're not challenging yourself? See, people make the mistake of, quote unquote, you hear that term, getting in your comfort zone, right? I'm in my comfort zone. Or you hear the term complacent. A lot of individuals also get complacent because when they get to a period, in their life where things might be going good or consistent, they tend to just pull back or fall back and get a little complacent. Like, okay, I'm getting results. I'm getting some change. I'm cool with that. Let me fall back. No, that's when you're supposed to go harder. That's when you're supposed to keep going at it. Because remember this, when you're working on every areas in your life, remember, I always use this metaphor. Apply that methodology as a car. A car needs constant maintenance. I don't care if it's a brand new car, fresh off the lot, brand new 2018. After a while, what? After X amount of miles, you got to get a tune-up. You got to get an oil change. You got to rotate the tires. Well, look at yourself as the car. Just because, say, you worked at an area in your life with food or diet, or you have a bad temper, And say you start doing work and all of a sudden you get some results and then you back off. Well, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen eventually in a while. That stuff will start to resurface and bubble. So the point is, when you get the feel, you'll know when to go back into that area and continue to do work. So you need to sit back to be that master magician and be in control of your universe. You look at you and look at yourself. I'm trying to use metaphors. Look at yourself in the control room and say, okay, let me analyze what's going on in my life right now. Okay, I need to work right here. Even though I did this last year, but some shit is resurfaced in the area with my money. It's not right. Or some shit is resurfaced with personal problems, with family members. I need to focus on some healing work in this area. You know that. You're the navigator. You're the one that's calling the shot. So you know when you need to move, how, when, how long you should stay, and then move on to the next thing. So you constantly got to do the maintenance. Just like you got to do the maintenance on a car, you got to do the maintenance on yourself. So if you think that, I'm just going to do a couple of things a few times and you might get results right off the bat, don't fall for the illusion that because you got results right away that you don't need to do shit in that area no more, because you're going to be setting yourself up for disaster. Trust me when I tell you. All right. On a Kemetic perspective, chaos is nothing. It is the primordial waters of the abyss, where the first divine emanations appeared. Also, in the Egyptian mysteries, the chaos can be parallel with the daemon serpent, Apophis, but in this manifestation being only a reflex of the chaos itself. Apophis, also called Apep, was cyclical, as some people will say. His daily attacks on the bark of Ra showed some coherence and strategy, which is not very chaotic in nature. The same can be also understood under a Sethian view, since Set himself is also a reflex of chaos, but he can also be defined in some way, having his own thoughts and patterns. He is not random, he has an identity. While the pure chaos cannot be truly defined, has no rules or concept, chaos is none, the primordial ocean of nothing, where the first thoughts emerged, where life was born, the old gods, right? And we went over a lot of that last week. Now that we have seen that Keperu is one consequence of chaos, we can also understand that chaos itself is a tool to the vampire, an instrument that he uses and sets free so that the transformation and development can occur. Vampires are the catalyst of spiritual evolution. They transform, adapt, and evolve. So that's the perspective of chaos from the author of this book, which I think is in line for the most part. Now, when he's talking about, the only thing I might be in a slight disagreement with here is the Set and Apep. Though he's right in a sense, yes, it ties into a certain mindset of view. I totally agree with that. But I think that the Set Apep concept takes on a more multitude of diverse meanings. I don't really think I would limit it, in my opinion, just to that. So I would be in a little bit of a disagreement with that. Because we, as on this path, remember, we don't really want to look at Set, Apep, Ra, or any of these deities specifically with one specific identity. We want to more focus on what they represent as an archetype, the different character types that they represent. So I would probably take that a little bit further. That's the only thing I probably wouldn't be in line with there. I think that also I wouldn't just say chaos. Well, from a symbolic sense, yes, chaos. I understand why the author is saying it's the primordial or ocean of nothing, in the sense it's nothingness. It can't be described. It has no limit, as he said in the first portion of the book we went over a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, you need to use your own input when it comes to that. Remember, this is the author's perspective and his experience. So it doesn't mean any of us have to agree with everything in its entirety. That's important to understand. All right, so it leaves us with the last two short sections. Heka. I've talked videos about this, and the dark flame, all right, which really is the black flame, as we know on the left-hand path. Same thing. Just as you might see it worded different, just like you saw Keperu or Keperu, you'll see it in some circles as Kepera. It's the same thing, just some pronunciations and wordings from the different translations from the, Metu Neter or the Egyptian language. You'll see some people pronounce it or write it different. But it is referring to the same thing, as long as we're aware of that. Heka, right? Heka is the Egyptian word for magic, making reference to the power of words, both written and spelled. Even though the techniques used in this practice of magic are out of the subject analyzed within the book, A reference to it was demanded since it represents such an important and vital part of the Ascetian tradition. The Ascetians used magic not only to achieve their objectives, producing change with their conscious and determined act of pure will, but they primarily rely on it as a powerful tool to aid development and evolution of the self. Knowing how to say the right word, do the proper gesture, and induce the ideal thought is the correct second at the perfect cosmic moment is practicing true magic. Remember, performative utterance is a very important aspect of Heka. When we do a lot of group rituals here as a group, invocation and performative utterance is a very foundational aspect of group magic. When you're doing group ritualistic magic, there should be passion behind that performative utterance. That's what fuels it. That's what gives it the energy. That's what gives it the fire. As I mentioned before, why you see in a lot of rituals red and black as colors used, be it for candles. You'll see that we'll use it a lot on the altar down here and a lot of work that we use because of what the colors red and black represent. Red and black represent that passion, that pure fire and desire for red. Black represents all the things we were just talking about: chaos, darkness, no limitations, pure power, right? When you combine power and passion, you also connect it to Sith philosophy, right? When you look at some of the fiery deities, when you look at Papa Legba or Elegua, red and black, right? There's always that representation, that symbolism, because especially when you look at, for an example, in the voodoo tradition of Papa Legba, remember that red and black, that fire and that path, he is that bridge, that gap that connects this realm to the realm of the dead, right? Which I call the realm of the living. So all that plays an important part when you're doing performative utterance in connection to Heka, right? Because Heka, which is mentioned all throughout the Egyptian text, the coming forth by day, and you don't hear a lot of people in Kemetic conscious circles, quote unquote, that are not left-hand path, and even though it's right in front of their face, talk about black magic in Egypt, which is Heka, right? That's the real power of the gods in ancient Egypt, right? It's never talked about. It's all this fluffy shit with Aset being the mother goddess and Heru being the divine savior. It's another form of fucking religion. All they did was just paint it with Egyptian characters. You understand? We got to get away from that way of thinking because that's not really what it represented. It represented the, as I say here, that primordial energy / chaos, right? This is where Heka gets its energy from, right? All right, then it goes on to say it, knowing how to say the right word, do the proper gesture, and induce the ideal thought in the correct second and the perfect cosmic moment is practicing true magic. And that way, usually without being aware of it, many of us are magicians. However, sacred wisdom consists in knowing how to consciously do it. So that's where it comes in for you as the adept doing the work. So you can't just read about it, though you could read about it and quote something from somewhere, read something, or you memorize something from somewhere. That doesn't make you an adept or a black magician. What does is knowing how to consciously do it, carry the work out, not just talk about it. As we say, what? Be about it, right? That's the reality. Here's a quote from Coming Forth by Day. Heka was made for them to use as a weapon for warding off occurrences. And so they created dreams for the night to see the things of the day. Magic is not only used in the Ascetian tradition as a ritualistic reflex of old practices and ceremonial gatherings, nor does it simply rely on traditional sorcery. Ascetian magic is a mix of different occult cultures, techniques, and knowledge, which developed across the millennia, built on top of the ancient traditional Egyptian high magic. The Ascetian practices are far from the popular concepts of witchcraft and have been kept throughout the years at elitist practices only available to some select few. Now, I'm going to tell you this, and later as we go through this, I'm going to get into more of the energy feeding of this tradition or path. I don't say tradition, spiritual system. As I said before, it's not. This is not a path for everybody. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't even care if you're on this path. Do your thorough research and due diligence. Carry out some work and rituals to see how you adapt to the energy, how it works for you, how it feels for you. I don't really would recommend anybody do some heavy diving in and doing some feeding energy work without really educating themselves to the pros and cons of it, how it works, the effect it has on you, the effect on the individual, how to recharge and replenish yourself, how to keep yourself in line, what is the cutoff line, what is too much absorption as opposed to too little absorption, understanding the correct techniques, working it through non-contact as opposed to contact. You should know all these things, in my opinion, in my experience, before you start really carrying a lot of these practices out. Now, there's a lot of basic things you can do, as it's describing in here, basic invocations, activating certain energy or forces. I would start with the simplistic things. You could work with the Akaru, calling the four corners, the spirits of the dead, things of that nature, to get yourself acclimated with the energy and the vibration and how it feels, to make sure it's conducive to what you're doing. Because when you tap into that primordial chaos, understand this, especially when you're working with aspects of the astral realm or the spiritual plane, whatever people want to call it. Remember, you're going to encounter all different types of energy. That's where you meet the true self. You're going to encounter things that you've manifested by way of your subjective consciousness. Those can be, quote unquote, what somebody would describe as demons or monsters or spirits, and they're self-created. So you're gonna bring everything to the realization and reality and manifest those things you created, those things that you are aware of and not aware of. So you might want to really get yourself acclimated with the basic principles, understand them before you start getting into, in my, again, experience and opinion, those more intense work, right? All right, so then it goes on. All right. Okay, no. Okay. These were usually closed communities dedicated to the study of the occult mysteries and lost cultures, being historically more accessible to the ones involved in scholar and the knowledgeable sect of the occultist society. In this way, the ascending knowledge has always been far from reach of the more traditional practice of popular occultism, whose knowledge has always been more accessible to the general public and the ones interested in the subject. This is the main reason why this tradition has never been vulgarized like the majority of the other once more restricted traditions. Here's another quote from the Book of the Dead. The blood of Asset, the spells of Asset, the magical powers of Asset shall make this great one strong, and shall be an amulet of protection that would do to him the things which he abominates. Egyptian Book of the Dead. And we talked about, I think it was last week, Asset, the dark goddess concept of Asset. Asset, when you really study it, and remember the first video, the children of Asset, the Ascetian vampires, Asset she was ruthless. When you understand, I don't mean it's not a bad thing. When you look at what she was in its totality, as recorded in the text, not just what people want to tell you in these fluffy circles. And as I said last week, I'm not saying that the motherly figure, the goddess figure, and all those mainstream characteristics that people identify with Asset, I'm not saying that those are not real and that they're not true and they don't exist. What I am saying is that is not the only aspects that make Asset up. She was a dark sorceress. She was lethal. She had serious power and energy. There was a dark side to her. She knew her power, especially when she knew about tapping into the divine feminine. She knew that divine feminine was something she could utilize to her advantage, to the very point. At one point, when you read the stories in ancient Egypt, she had to uphold, Egypt when all that stuff was, quote unquote, going down. We know what that represents. So on this path, we look at when it says the blood of Asset, the spell of Asset, the magical powers of Asset shall make one strong. There's that connection with the blood, right? Not just talking about the literal blood, it's talking about the bloodline also, right? It's talking about the concept in ancient Egypt of eternal life. What does that really mean? Eternal life in ancient Egypt when it means keeping the bloodline pure, keeping the secrets pure. Remember, as the author said in here, some of these sacred spiritual systems were kept secret and sacred for a reason, because they didn't want this shit to get in the hands of the wrong people, right? So in a lot of these spiritual systems, the secrets were passed from mouth to ear, right? And you will find that very predominantly, I mentioned this before in the past, in a lot of African spiritual systems. It's not really written down. You can find a lot of books on this stuff, but a lot of it is basically bullshit. But you have the ability to create your own spiritual secrets. That's why I tell people, just the way that they came up with something, kept it sacred and secret and passed it down through an oral tradition, you in 2018 have the same ability to do that. This is what I mean when you start creating your path to self-mastery. If you create something that's unique to you, that's not defined, written in any book, that's not given any criteria, guideline, or being judged by something that's pre-existent, you have now created something that's sacred and secret. So you don't understand that. People don't look at it from that perspective. So the most powerful thing is when you learn how to work with these systems on your own, and through working on your own, through your ritualistic work, is where you get your revelations and things are uncovered, and you start tapping into things you didn't know before. That's the same way that those that came before us did it. They were able to do the same exact thing. And then they came up with their own initiatic systems, traditions, and spiritual concepts. You have the ability to do the same thing, but that change and that awareness and those quote unquote revelations are only going to come when you do your ritualistic work. That's where the power comes. I can't stress that enough. That's true initiation. That's true. And initiation is supposed to bring about change, right? All right. Let's get through the rest of this. All right. One of the common translations for Heka is the magic of words. In the time of the Assyrian Empire, the Assyrians used the Kemetic as their main language, which was used not only among the people, as within nobility throughout the whole Egypt. However, a sacred language known as Serkem was kept hidden within the temples. This language was not used for conversation or in social events, but rather in the arts of magic. It was based on the intuitive use of mantras manifested by words of power that resulted in the real magic of words, that ancient Heka. We use this a lot in our rituals down here. We just used this concept in the last ritual we did last Friday. We use a lot of that, what they're calling in this book here, Serkem. And I know there might be some people in this room. Yes, Sister Mandy's still here, and if Dave is still here, they know what I'm talking about. If anybody was, I know Sister Myra was at the event. We use a lot of the mantras or this concept of Serkem when we carry out this ritualistic work. And it is power, because when we would do, for an example, last Friday, when we were doing the mantras, as we start to tap in unison, it's crazy. We all attested to, as we did it, there was the group that was there, but then it felt like there was many more people in that room with us. What you start to do is you start to open portholes, right? You start to open pockets, quote unquote, or gaps where these spirits and entities can start coming in. There was many other things people had shared at that. I know other things that people, when we had the discussion afterward, experienced based on the things we did. But I'm in this particular sense, I'm referring to what the author is referring in this book as this hidden language used via mantras, or this Serkem, as he calls it in here. We utilize this in our ritualistic work very frequently. We incorporate this aspect in a lot of our rituals. There's usually a point in the rituals where we all do mantras in unison. And the sound and the vibration and frequency, the best way I can describe it, like when we did one activating the Lucifer energy. And you could hear this high-pitched singing, like somebody was singing high in opera in between the octaves that we were doing. I likened it to, from my experience, that spirit of Lucifer coming through, confirming, because we were activating him through a certain way by the way the chant was laid out. And then it felt like there was a chorus of people in there with us, in addition to the group that was there. It's the best way I can describe it in words. But it's quote unquote, without sounding religious, because I don't want to, it sounded like what somebody, when you hear angelic music, that's what I was hearing in between the mantras and the pauses. It sounded like you would hear on the surface when you hear like angelic music or angels singing. So it was a confirmation. Lucifer, quote unquote, being the angel of light, was just a confirmation that the energy that we were activating for that particular ritual, one, first and foremost, within ourselves, was confirmed from the experience that we were also having externally as a group. There was a lot of things, and that's just a small perspective. I know others that were there had their other takes on it, but just to confirm what the author is saying here, this is definitely something that is definitely a reality, right? Misunderstood among the common people, The Surkhem language was usually feared by many in those days, being commonly referred to as the black speech by most of the non-magical population. This expression for the Surkhem language also has its roots in the name of the Akkadian Empire itself, which they call Kemet, meaning black land. Now, I'm going to be in disagreement with this because when you study the etymologies of the word, that's a little bit off because the reason why I say that's a little bit off. You wouldn't be talking about here the pre-dynastic Egyptians. The reason why is Kemet really is what we would refer to as from a Semitic languages of Aramaic Hebrew, right? And it comes from the word Chem or Cam. And Chem or Cam is who we know as Ham, one of the sons of Noah. So the reason why I never refer to Egypt as Kemet is because it's tying you back into biblical and religious philosophy. So I would be in just in my studies, I would be in disagreement with that, what the author is saying there. I don't really agree with that. You couldn't connect that with the pre-dynastic Egyptians. Historically and information-wise, that would be inaccurate, okay? Then it goes on to say, meaning the black land. So the sacred language of their temples was also a black tongue to their eyes, being both cryptic and magical. In fact, the name of the language is a blend between other two distinctive Kemetic words, Serket and Kem, meaning scorpion and black respectively. The first part, now go back and rewatch The Scorpion King. There's some science in there. I ain't gonna get into that right now. All right, then it goes on to say, being the word that meant scorpion in Kemetic was also the name of an important entity in the Akkadian theology, the representation of the seven scorpions of Isis. Connecting the genesis and usage of this language not only to Aset and her divine inspiration upon the dynamically created sacred words, but also to her fearless daemons, which used. So Aset had fearless demons, right? We don't hear this on the surface, right? It's right there in the text. You got to read it. Why nobody presents this? I don't know why, right? Which used the Surkhem as their native language and added reason to the fear of the people towards the expression of this obscure magical language. Now, I'm also going to be doing more in depth and going in deeper into some of this. I'm going through the surface. For those that are going to be taking the online class starting next weekend, we're going to be going a little bit more into this. I'm just going into the surface shit here. Then it goes on to say, being the Kem part of the word, also one of the possible reasons why the people knew it as the black speech, unlike their native language, the Kemetic that meant from the black land. Again, I'm not really fully 100% on board with that because I believe when you're saying that word Kemet, my question would be, if we're using that term, what language? Because remember, we know after the pre-dynastic Egyptians, you had the Hyksos dynasties, which are the last 46 dynasties. And in my research, I think what the author, may or may not be aware or just ain't pointing out here is you would have to be talking about the last 46 dynasties if you're using that terminology. And I'd beg to differ with that a little bit. I don't really fully agree with that. That's just me. All right, the very last section, which is short, and then that'll wrap this up. The dark flame, right? Which really we also might know as the black flame, right? Being a purely Akkadian concept, the dark flame is a condition that can be both invoked or manifested by the vampire, conscious or unconsciously. It is an amorphous type of energy that manifests in the layers of the aura as a reaction to different kinds of situations. The dark flame manifests by heightened states of consciousness, altered mood, courage, and ecstasy, many times boosting the ego. It can be triggered by common things like a social confrontation, a sense of injustice, or it can be invoked in a more ritualistic or direct manner in situations of danger and extreme conditions. The dark flame only manifests for short periods of time, being fueled by high streams of energy, quickly exhausting the whole energy system if done without control. That's why I said, when you're tapping into the black flame is the essence and origin of all of this power, or as they say here, the dark flame. Understand it, because as it said here, without control, okay, you can exhaust all of your energy. That's why I was saying a few minutes back, you should really at least educate yourself to a thorough point before you start engaging in some of these techniques. Several tools as music, ambient incense, special clothing, ritual, and blood can be used to help achieve the state where the dark flame manifests. These things do not influence the dark flame itself,
but help the mind in tweaking to the altered state needed to empower it. Feelings can also be used to access this flame, especially aggressive ones like rage and hate that more easily fuel it. So you've heard me say before in the past, hate and anger is not a bad thing if it's channeled correctly. Now, hate and anger without control, yes, that's a bad thing, because that can lead you into doing or making bad decisions that might backfire on you, cause you to get into a heap of shit, right? So rage and hate can be an energy that you can use. You can hate something so bad about yourself that's holding you back. You can hate it so much that you want to destroy it and fix it. That's a productive hate. So learn to take that hate and that energy and channel it to something productive where it can bring about transformation for you spiritually, mentally, emotionally, or physically. So remember, if we understand the concept of that there's duality to everything in the universe, so even that applies to hate, anger. There's a duality to that. Understand it, especially in connection with the black flame, right? Despite this general analysis of the dark flame, its power can also be used in different ways from the ones described above and to a more positive end. It is not only feelings of rage that can fuel the dark flame. It is easy to make the parallel that if hate can trigger it, so can love. And in this way, some vampires are able to center on their deep feelings to achieve great things and have incredible attitudes, empowering themselves with the strength of the dark flame and being able to face difficult situations. In this way, many vampires can have attitudes that are easily condemned in the eyes of mere mortals, but that are driven from pure love, being highly prized among them. In some cases, the energetic urge of the dark flame results in devastating behaviors and feelings from the vampire, leaving him in an agonizing mix-up of energies, completely exhausted and consumed by the intensity of this flame. This situation might result in the vampire getting a feeling of a sense of powerlessness towards the situation that set forth the manifestation of the dark flame. In worst cases, can lead to mild depression and panic. But if able to work out a solution or defensive mechanism towards the situation that caused it, it can leave the vampire in a powerful condition with a new revamped dark flame, reborn from the ashes of his inner mind like a phoenix after it's burned out. All right. That pretty much concludes that section I wanted to run through. I think those are key ingredients to understand key perspectives on this path and how they work. You had darkness, chaos, Heka, the dark flame, right? Reason why I said a few minutes ago, understand the key elements of this path where you practice it. I think these are foundational elements of this path. Are they, not saying they are the only, but you should really understand and master these principles when indulging, let's say, on spiritual practices and working on this path. The last part that it was referring to there in the black flame or the dark flame is very important. When it used, and again, I like to be cautious when I talk about this subject, regardless if it's this path or any other spiritual system on the left-hand path or the path of self-mastery, as we like to say, the dangers of it. It mentioned one right there. If you're not prepared and you overload the subconscious mind, right? Some people start fucking and dabbling in shit that they really ain't got no business. What I mean by that is they think they're ready, but they haven't really, one, proven to themselves that they're ready by doing the necessary research and prep work they need to do to get themselves in line and in sequence with what work they need to do so they can prepare themselves for what's getting ready to take place. Why is that important? Because you always hear me say you must be prepared for the change that comes, that goes over everybody's head on this path. You must be prepared for the change that comes when you come on this path. Go back to a lot of my old videos. I stress that a lot. Why do I stress that a lot? Because I make it clear when you start to fuck with this path in the spiritual system, it brings about the change that you need, not necessarily the change that you want. Some people confuse that too, meaning they come on this path like, let me give you an example so I'm clear on this. They come on this path, yeah, I want to come on this path. And, they say the mundane shit. I want to be successful financially and I want to have knowledge and wisdom. Yeah, we all want that shit. But what they fail to realize, that might be why they came on the path. They start activating shit and not realizing that the energy is shifting them to, well, you know what? You got a fucked up temper. You know what? You need to work on your attitude. You know what? You suck managing money. You know what? You're a shitty ass mother or father or a parent. You know what? You need to fucking get your diet together. All these other things start coming to the surface. And here comes the critical shit outside of the mundane. What might come to the reality, you might be in the wrong marriage. You might be in the wrong career. You might be in the wrong circle of friends. This is going to bring this all to the surface. I've seen people's worlds get completely turned upside down and inside out, literally, where it brought that much strong, abrupt change, and they weren't ready for that shit. They said, wait a minute, I came on this path to get a lot of money and to become spiritual and all that bullshit. Well, you could have stayed in church or some other bullshit you was doing before that to do that. This is like, let's use the sports analogy. This is the pros, man. This is the major leagues. This is the NFL. This is the NBA. This ain't the minor leagues. This ain't rookie ball. This ain't the B league and the C and the D league. You understand? If you ain't ready to deal with that change, this ain't the path for you. I'm gonna tell you that straight up. Straight up. Don't think you're gonna get preconditions to the change. That might be the change that you want, but the question is it the change that you need? And so what I've seen this happen so many times, including to myself, you might be focused in one area, but the work is taking you completely somewhere else. Like, whoa, why am I going to, work on this? This is some shit. That's because that's where you need to be. All right. So having said that, let me scroll up. I hope you guys put some good questions and comments in here. I would hope. I know we covered a lot. So I'm going to pause for a minute. Let me quick checking. I'm going to check the phone. See what's going on. All right, let's see where we at. All right. All right. Anyway, all right, so let's go back up here. All right, peace to Emin Blackstone. I think I greeted Brother Duma, Brother Jack, Kendrick, Ed Brown, peace. My Mama Huerte, a.k.a. Sister Mandy. What else we got? Papa Nieves, Brother Dave. Shaquana McDowell, peace. All right, let's see what else we got here. Baffa Marger. Hold on 1 second. Give me 1 second. All right. Okay. All right. Sister Maeve, I guess, was here earlier. Yes, today is Day of the Dead, right? Yesterday was All Souls Day, as I said in the beginning of the video. And, and before that, we know is what they call Halloween. And I was saying, yes, in the beginning of the video, if you weren't on, yes, these last 3 days are very powerful days to do work with the Gay Day, spirits of the dead, your ancestors. That current is very strong and high right now. And remember, in this equinox, fall going into the winter solstice, as I said in the beginning of the video, this is the best time of the year to do work for change within yourself, to destroy all the things about yourself, to destroy characteristics, habits, aspects of yourself that you know are holding you back or preventing you from evolving and growing. You should gear your ritualistic work for that, because that is the energy or the current that we are dealing with, okay? So that's why it actually inspired me to come on tonight last minute. Like I said, this wasn't planned. As you know, I kind of decided around 8:30, 8:35 or so just to randomly pop on because that current just kind of sparked and motivated me to kind of go through this stuff and talk about the things we're talking about this evening because of, again, what we know as All Hallows Eve, which they call Halloween, All Souls or All Saints Day, as the Catholic Church calls it, and then today, the Day of the Dead, right? Again, great to do rituals work with Santa Muerte today, the Holy Death, Papa, which I was working with Papa Legba the last couple of days and finishing something up starting tomorrow. So yes, it's that. This is that period that you can really tap in. All right. Yes, and earlier, and I believe Do It Like Me was referring to when we were talking about subjective and objective reality. That's a good point. Objective reality versus subjective reality. As long as we understand that, and as I was saying earlier, if you are discussing something with somebody who's very objective and really don't really tap into themselves spiritually or they're subjective, there's going to be that difference of opinion. Vice versa too. If somebody's just too subjective and don't know how to connect it to the objective, and remember, as adepts, we're supposed to be able to kind of create that harmony between the two. We understand if we're talking about something subjective, we also understand that the individual, he or she, may not be able to relate to everything that we're talking about that's subjective because they may or may not have had the same type of experiences and have the same perspectives. That's always going to exist in any circle. This is why it's fruitless to think there's going to be one system of thought or spirituality that everybody's going to agree on. It's never going to happen. There will never be one religion, philosophy, dogma, spiritual system that will be the, tell all and have all the answers to everything in the universe. And that's why established religion, established dogmas don't work, because that doesn't work for everybody. That's the whole point. All right. But good point. Also use the term implicit knowledge versus explicit knowledge. That's another way to look at it too. What else we got? Do It Like Me. I greatly appreciate your videos. Well, I appreciate you and everybody else tuning in. I'm glad to see. I don't think I've ever seen you in here before live. Good to see that you caught it. I'm glad you were able to catch one. I'm on my word there. Okay, it's just conversation. The Nickel Cannon piece. Peace to Stray Panther. Here's a good comment by Mama Muerte. Never once does anyone look at chaos as a blessing, and that's true. And you should, because remember, without chaos, nothing can exist. You can't put anything into motion without chaos. You must have the chaos first. When you understand what chaos really is and represents, and remember, who's the facilitator and the creator of that chaos? As it said earlier, we read, you are the origin of that chaos. And the sooner you figure that out, the easier it is to address it. But having said that, as I said earlier, knowing you are the origin of that chaos, you also are the one that can facilitate how to make order of that chaos. You are never a victim to the chaos. Only if you allow yourself to become a victim, you are the victim. So you hear that term, we know certain people that always like to play the role of the victim. Well, the same thing applies to this. See, understanding that principle that you are the god or goddess that's always in the center and the control of things, you're the facilitator, it wipes away the crutch that most people try to use to lean on when shit don't go their way. They like to blame something or somebody. We don't do that on this path. That's what this is talking about. You can't do that on this path. If you say that you're a god or a goddess and you're in control, then why don't you apply that same methodology when shit don't go right for you? It's funny how when shit goes right and things are going the way you want, you like to get cocky and I'm a god, I'm a goddess, because you think you're so divine and you got all this knowledge and you're pumping up your ego, right? You're fluffing your ego. But so funny how when shit don't go right, that drastically changes, is what I'm saying. It drastically changes. Now all of a sudden, people that are on these fluffy paths when shit go wrong, it's these evil forces. these disagreeable energies, these demonic energies. Now all of a sudden you're finding these external mythologies to justify your fuck ups and your failures. You understand? So that's a good metaphor. Chaos is a blessing if you understand it. Because people hear that term on the surface that may not be educated on this path and they go, that's some negative shit. No, it's not negative. Not to us who truly understand it. And that's why, again, a couple of weeks ago, or whenever it was, last week or the week, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I went over the Book of Noon, the Primordial Chaos. Or was that last week? Whatever. You know what I'm talking about. And I tried to give you, the foundation, or try to give you the point of origin. Because remember, as I said earlier, primordial has root in the word prime or original chaos, original. Some also call it the primordial energy, right? You'll hear that in other spiritual circles. Same shit. It's no different. Then Mama Muerte goes on to, when you sense and see chaos coming, that's a blessing. Slay it. No, there's an awakening once chaos, it passes. Yeah, it passes because you made order out of it. You were able now to put it in its correct perspective for you to make it work for you. That's the beauty of it. That's when you truly understand chaos, right? And you hear you'll hear these other terms. Embrace the madness, right? Embrace the chaos. Well, we embrace the madness and the chaos because we know it is necessary, not an option. It is necessary for it in order for anything else to happen. Hey, let me give you an example, right? People that are on these fluffy paths, whether you're religious or whatever right-hand path system you might be on, I don't care how peaceful at points you get things. You know, at some point that peace will be disrupted. It's going to be disrupted. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, but it's even more a matter of how that's dealt with. Why most people get disappointed or stay stuck in them paths or get scared or fear in those paths, because when things don't go wrong, they don't know how to make the adjustment. They either go 10 times harder and become more spooked out, or they get disappointed and they leave. And some just become lost. We know on this path, even when you might be in a point in your life, it might be some of us right now that have things for the most part in harmony. Things are working. But we never create that as a sense of false security and say, well, man, things are going pretty good right now. I'm just going to chill and lay back. No, as I said earlier, I go even harder. I look at it like, all right, I'm ahead in the game right now. Let me keep staying ahead. Look at it as being in a race. You're running a race. Even though you got a big lead on somebody, right? You ain't going to just slow the fuck down. You're going to want to keep maintaining your lead or create a bigger lead. So never have a false sense of illusion or security where you're on this path and you're working your spiritual magic, and things for the most part, as I said, could be going good at this moment in your life. But the real adept knows right over the horizon, right? And this is where I think the set of PEP concept takes on a more diverse meaning. The average person was like Ra. I've said this many times before, trying to keep a PEP at bay, but he was doing it falsely. He wasn't trying to embrace it. He felt by just trying to resist it and keep it away, and remember the symbology in this, he felt that was the way to overcome it. That's the average person in life. They feel like suppressing or just disregarding or going into a spiritual system to mask all their weaknesses and shortcomings, that's just going to disappear. Let me go become super religious in spirit. I'm so Kemetic. I'm so Ifa. I'm so Buddhist that I'm just going to meditate and I'm not going to be in the world. I'm going to become one with the universe, and all that shit's just going to disappear. It's not going to change the fact that you're a fucked up person. If you are fucked up and there's things you need to correct and work on yourself, by hiding in those systems isn't going to make it go away. What's going to happen is eventually when you implode, it's going to come to the surface even stronger than before you went and hid in one of those spiritual systems. Most people go into those religious systems or they go super hard because there's some insecurity they're trying to mask or cover up. Trust me when I tell you. There's some deficiency about themselves that they're trying to avoid. So they think by becoming super Kemetic and Egyptian and wearing Egyptian clothes every day and saying Hotep and wearing big ass ankhs the size of Flavor Flav's clock, they think that that's just going to mask all their bullshit. That's going to make it all
just disappeared. But what happens is, as soon as there's a moment that triggers something to bring that deficiency out, it either comes out even worse. It could be a fucked up temper. It could be, insecurity you might have about a certain situation, a fear. All of that bubbles and comes to the surface even more intense. That's a reality. Trust me when I tell you that shit. Don't believe me. Find out for yourself. Okay. What else we got? Peace to Sister Oni. Hands down. Killing low. Yes, and Mama Morta confirms you are your chaos. Yes, good question or good point. I don't say question by Duma Ken Rez. Is this why the Tet symbol of knot of asset was an important amulet? Yes, and I think I actually to the beginning of this book. Let's see if we can find it. That's a good question. Let me see. I think it's in the beginning, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on. Yes. So you see it right here. They also refer to it in here as the blood of asset, right? If you have the book, right? And you should go through these symbols in the beginning, right? And some of these symbols I actually have tattooed on my arms. I have the Sa on my arm, which is the symbol of protection. I have obviously the Ankh. They have in here as the 7 pillars, right? Ankh, immortality, Khepri, right? Let's just go through these and then touch a little bit on Duane McKenna's question. And that's an excellent point. Ankh, immortality, life, right? You should look at this in the very beginning. The scarab beetle, right? We talk about this all the time, is the symbol that represents Khepera or Khepri. Why? Because there's 2 unique aspects to the scarab, right? The scarab is one of the few creatures that can reproduce on its own. It rolls its own dung. It can produce life without the aid of another creature. That represents that remanifestation, regeneration. That's why you'll see the scarab beetle in all different hieroglyphics, on different writings in the temples, on the walls of the pyramids. And it also ties into the sun god Khepri, right? This symbol here, the Ka energy, I have that also tattooed on my arm right there. You've probably seen that before. And I have it for that reason. The Ka energy, right, represents that primordial chaos. You'll see that. That's why again, now with tattoos, I'm not going to tell people what and what not to do. You always hear this saying years ago, if you get something tattooed on you, make sure it has a significant meaning. You remember back in the day when motherfuckers was getting Japanese writing on them, and they didn't even know what the fuck it meant. That shit used to kill me. But anyway, the Ka represents that primordial energy or chaos, right? That's the Ka, right? Looks like I always get, people always ask me when they see this tattoo, it's the funniest shit. Why does it look like a field goal post or somebody's like saying, assholes. Why does it look like somebody saying the field goal is good? This is dumbass motherfuckers. I think it's a corny ass fucking joke. And then the blood of asset, right? As it describes here, the Tiet or the Tet, right? That symbol, the Tet symbol, it's spelled here Tiet, it's the same thing like Brother Doom typed in. That would be exactly why he said the knot was an asset, was an important amulet of Set. Why? Why was it an important amulet of Set? Because it represented the blood, right? The knot, the clotting, the power of the blood, right? It also really, when you look at it again, right, you also see there's a couple of things you can see here if you look close. If you look at the center, it's near the heart, right? If you look at it, it could also represent the figure of a person. You also see the Ankh embedded in there. You see the knot, right? When you look at the center, the chest, we know the circulatory system or the blood, everything that's blood or the blood that's pumped through the life of the heart. There's many different hidden meanings in this symbol. But in relation to that question, yes, there's many different aspects of that. The Tiet, the Tiet or Tet, same thing, right? Then you see the wasp scepter. You'll see this symbol here, right? If you look at a lot of the pictures of the Egyptian deities, you'll see them holding the wasp scepter, right? Because the wasp represents power or divinity, right? When you look at a lot of the ancient Egyptian deities, whether it's in drawings or statues,
not all of them, but you'll see a lot of them always depicted holding the wasp scepter. So it represented that they were in command, control, and had full understanding of their personal spiritual power, right? Remember, these are the 7 pillars now, as the author describes in this book, right? The Ba, the soul, we've gone over this, right? We know what that is. This is our real essence, what really makes us, so we are souls that live on eternally, right? The soul is the true essence of who and what you really are. That's the Ba, right? I'm just giving you the quick breakdowns. The Ib, the heart, right? We know the heart is the root seat from where all power and emotion comes from, right? We also liken that when one thing that the author said in this book that we were reading, and I think it was in the chaos section, the black flame section, where it said, even as hate and rage can fuel the flame, so can love. What love was it talking about? Again, we've gone over this, divine love, or what they call divine ishq in Eastern mysticism. That's real love of everything in existence. And I don't say it in a fluffy way. I don't mean it be in a passive way, but understanding true love is having true understanding, right? True love is first and foremost accepting yourself for who and what you are, and your relation and connection to everything in existence, people, creation. That's true love. Don't confuse that with love for an individual, love for a piece of jewelry, love for a car, love for your spouse or your children. That's a different type of love. What it's talking about here, the Ib, the heart, when it's representing that, it's talking about that type of love. That's what a magician seeks to tap into. So even though I know Brother brought up just one of the pillars, I just figured I'd run through them real quick. But yes, the answer to that question, it is an important amulet. The blood also represents the power. And another great concept you can use if you're working with asset as a dark archetype, as we went over a couple of weeks ago, and say you're constructing a ritual, I would actually have that sigil on the altar somewhere, and I would work with it in some shape, form, or fashion from that capacity, right? I could also create a ritual and take that excerpt from the Book of the Dead, right? I would, for an example, if I was creating a ritual around that, and just from Brother Duma's question, he just gave me the quick idea to spark something like that. Watch. I would take that amulet, have it on the altar. I'd put there an image of asset, and I would create a ritual as tapping in to that energy or bloodline or power and wisdom of asset, right? And I would simply use that excerpt as an opening invocation, right? Just give you an idea for if you wanted to create a ritual. I would say the excerpt on page, where is it? Hold on, I got it. Page 88, where you have the excerpt from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, invoking, because to me, reason why I would do that actual invocation from the Egyptian Book of the Dead ties into aspects of what that Tet symbol represents. So there's just a quick idea of how you can create a ritual. Simple. Take whatever colors you want to associate with acid. I'd probably use red in this case because I'm working with the blood. I would use a red candle. Obviously, maybe cast a hermetic circle before I begin. Something like out of the Necrominion. I'd have an image of Asset on the altar. I'd have that sigil there, either on the altar in front of her image, or I'd have it behind her, somewhere I can focus on. Because once you get locked in your mind what that Tet symbol represents, it's going to activate that energy in your psyche as you're working the rituals, right? And I would connect my intent for carrying out the ritual, or why I'd want to do it. I'd want to tap into that bloodline of Asset. What is that bloodline of Asset? Everything we're talking about in this book. I'd want to connect into the inner mysteries and get a thorough understanding of what that represents. And this is why I was saying early in the beginning of the video, this is where your transformation, your revelations, and your higher levels of understanding come in, or the hidden secrets or mysteries get revealed to you by way of doing your work. That's how you do it. It's as simple as that. And I just made that shit up while we were here online. I'm just giving you an example. You don't have to do it that way, but because of the energy, Brother Duma Ken mentioned that, and then all of a sudden we're talking about primordial chaos and energy. My energy just shifted to there. So I just made that shit up as we were here. I've never done that, But guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do that now because of that. That's what sparked it. So I'm just showing you how, when you're on this path, you create your own path to self-mastery. This is why I say, and I mentioned this, that I came up through all in the past, came through all of those traditional spiritual systems. I'm not active in them no more. I don't care to be. I don't really want anything to do with them because I know what it involves. And like I say, if I've mentioned this many times over the years in many different videos, if you feel the need to experience the traditional aspect of it, then go for it. But also understand with that comes the rules and regulations you must follow, whether you like them or not. The difference is on this path, when you're in control and you're the master over your path, you can dictate what you want and what you want to do and don't want to do, what you like and don't like. Unfortunately, you can't do that in a traditional initiatic system. You have to follow the regulations, the guidelines. There's no deviating from it. Again, if you're willing to do that and that's the choice of the decision you make, then power to you. I know it's not the same as me telling you if I knew now what I knew then, I wouldn't have done it. I know that's not the same as experiencing it. To some people, it is good enough because they're on their own path now and experiencing for self. But if you're an individual that still feels the need, and I get this email a lot from many different people over the years, and that's my advice to them. I mean, I can only explain it in so many words, but if you feel like you need to experience it, then by all means experience it, but understand the responsibility that comes with it. That's one of the reasons what motivated me to do what I do here, is so I can share that with people. If I can help them not go through a lot of the drama and bullshit. And there's many other people that can attest to similar experiences that I talk about. I'm not the only one. There's thousands out here that have, experienced and left. And because they came to the realization, look, I could do this shit on my own and actually go further in my spirituality. The problem is with a lot of those systems, you become a slave to them. I'm not talking physically. I'm talking mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Now, I say this, and having said that, do I still, in all those systems I work with, do I still work with the Orishi, Voodoo, the Voodoo deities, the Loa, the Gede? Of course I do, but I work with them how I see fit. I adjust my concepts based how I work with it now on this path. I don't have to, I'm not obligated and a slave to all of the traditional methods of doing things, right? I'll create my own stuff, like work I'm doing with Papa Legba now. Okay, yes, it incorporates some of the traditional, you'll always have the traditional elements there, but I choose how I want to put them. Like, let me give you an example. What I'm doing right now with Papa Legba, I'm getting ready to finish tomorrow, right? I'm getting ready to do what, because I said this is we're in a period right now dealing with change or fixing things or destroying things about yourself to bring about the correct change you need to take those things that might be holding you back and be able to move forward. So we want to rid ourselves. So I said earlier, I was talking about working with pathway and road opener deities, right? I made that clear. So it's a very simple ritual one can do is in front of my Papa Legba shrine, I'm going to draw the Vede of Papa Legba, right? In the right corner, I will place an offering of candies, peanuts. I will take fresh water and I'll do some casting with the 4 coconuts. I'll place that in a bowl of fresh water, offering of black coffee. The Vede, you can draw the simple one. You don't have to be a master to do it. You can draw the simple cross with the arrows on each points and the cane. If you want to get real detailed with the other graph, you got them skills. I know they say you can use cornmeal. I'll simply use the cascarilla, the white powder. It's like using chalk. There is no right or wrong. Remember, if it's your intent. If your intent is sincere to yourself, you're being sincere and real with yourself, it's always going to come out and manifest for you. Then obviously I have a mixed red and black candle, 2 colors, because some will say you can use white for Papa Legba, some will say you can use red, black. I like to use a combination of red and black because I know he represents both of those energies. When I was talking about the passion and the fire, and then I also know that black, which represents everything that we're talking about tonight, chaos, power, darkness, no limitations. That's all of that energy. And I'll take a 7-day candle and I'll burn that day. And I think I mentioned the black coffee just pure black coffee. Little shit like that, real simple. And then what I'll basically do is take something simple. I have a personal maraca, and if you have a shrine set up for Papa Legba, he should have his own maraca. You should never use a rattle/maraca for multiple things, because remember, that's exclusive. Every time you shake in that maraca or rattle, and the basic phrase is "I go Papa Legba," which means open the gate, you should only use it because you're summoning same. Remember, when you draw the veve, sometimes just drawing the veve is enough to bring the spirit through. Sometimes that's literally all you have to do. And the ritual, for an example, we did out on the beach, we actually used the sand. I've never done it with the sand, but it added a different element when we did it last Saturday, and I drew it in the sand because I had my visual on it when we were doing it, drew the veve in the sand, shake the rattle, and called, I go Papa Legba to open the gates. And it just instantly it worked. Sometimes it's a combination of both. But remember, look at that veve as an activation point. That's like the gateway, the landing strip, for lack of a better word. Look at it, I mentioned this before, I think. Look at it as an airplane landing on a runway at nighttime. It needs the lights on the runway, right? Remember, when you're taking a spirit that's in energy form, right? Remember, the spirit in energy form sees the light. We say the aura of the individual, or the halut in Eastern mysticism. Remember, it's the vibrational frequency that gives off the light that they can sense. So all that is important when you're doing the ritualistic work, especially in this system. So when you're opening the gates for that spirit of Papa Legba to come through, remember, when you're working with that system, and when we did it out on the beach last Saturday, first of all, it's not going to go in correct sequence until you first ask the gates to be open by way of Papa Legba, right? Excuse me. You're asking the gates to be open for all the other spirits to come through. So what I'm saying, I'm bringing all this up to say, long story short, the traditional aspects are still there as I'll practice it on this path, but I don't need to be restricted to the set structure that certain individuals will say. So anybody that knows something about it and say has done work with me, we'll see a lot of the traditional elements are there. Of course, that's going to be there because that's what's kept the spiritual practice a strong foundation over thousands of years. So I'm not saying that. I'm not saying to abandon all the traditional aspects of it. What I'm saying is don't become a slave to it. That becomes a problem. When you got to be in house and house such, and Babalawo or Babalocha or Madrino or Padrino says you have to do this and you can't do that, that's the shit I'm done with. I don't fuck with that no more. And the reason why I don't fuck with it is because of my past experiences I went through. I felt like after being in it for years, I started to feel literally like a slave to this shit. Like after I did this, oh, you need to do this ritual. Oh, you know what? We got to go down to the ocean and do this for a shoe. Oh, you know what? We got to do this for the bait. I started to realize that, wait, I think there's a little pimping going on here. And I feel like I'm the one being pimped. And then I started to realize, wait a minute. I can have the same ability to do what they're doing. I may not do it the same exact way from a traditional standpoint, but if I know the basics of knowing how to activate the power and the energy, I get the same results and sometimes even better. That's the difference. So that's the best way I can explain that. So yes, I still work with the Loa. I still work with the Gede. I still work with the spirits of the dead. I still work with the Orishi in some shape, form, or fashion. And the reason why I said before in the past, I'm more or less now, if you ask, well, what methodology would I use or the closest way to describe it, I would say the voodoo hoodoo aspect of it in the New Orleans traditional spiritual system. That resonates more with me than anything else because it gives you the liberty and the freedom to work with it as you see fit, not having to be confounded and initiated in some traditional aspect of it. That's the best way I can describe it. But I don't even know what brought all that shit on. But anyway, all right. All right, what else we got? What do we got? Things skipped on me. All right. Okay, this is where I left off. I don't know if I'm saying the name right. Sretswan. I don't know if it's Sir Retz or Sretswan. I've been working with Callie. Sheely, from attraction to the energy and getting results, would you consider her mainly a deconstructive or destructive energy, or both? I would consider her both and more. In the same aspect as she's deconstructive, she'll tear things down, and being destructive, she will completely destroy things. At that same, but remember, anytime you're working with those elements, there's always something that will immediately follow there, without a shadow of a doubt. That's part of making order of the chaos. Will be the regeneration, renewal, or something new will be created. So, for an example, if you're working with Callie, and Callie is another great road clearing archetype to work with. If you're working with Callie to destroy something about yourself, a bad habit, or a characteristic about yourself, or say you're having blockages in your life, in personal family relationships, personal relationships, money problems, you can ask Callie to destroy everything in your path that's holding you back, or preventing you, those things that you're aware of and not aware of. You could ask her to destroy all those things. And then the path will be made clear for you to start creating new ways and new things. So long story short, yes, she represents those and so many more. And remember, Callie in this path, dealing with vampirism, she is considered one of the most fierce vampire goddesses. And there's obviously the sexual aspect of Callie, which I think some people might overly focus on, but that's there too. There's sensuality. Callie is a unique archetype in the sense that she embodies all of those fierce energies: destruction, raw power, chaos, vulgar violence, right? The best way I can describe it. I always refer to Callie as the motherly figure. Well, this is how Callie teaches her initiates. You've heard me say this on many videos if you watched me over the years. Callie is the type of individual that throws the children, if you can't swim, into the deep end of the pool and says, swim. That's the way Callie deals with you. Understand, when you work with Callie, I want to be clear on this. If people listening may not have worked with Callie a lot, be prepared, because Callie will bring about change abruptly. And it's fierce. A good book I always recommend people that's a good book to start out with, is by Bao Cadman, Callie Mantra Magic. There's a lot of good, powerful rituals in there that are very simple, easy to carry out, but they're very effective, and they bring about results. Trust me when I tell you, they bring about results. But to me, it's a very good book for somebody who's interested in working with Callie, to understand her power, to understand the divine feminine, to understand that aspect of Callie. When you deal with gender, again, I'm going to go back to 7 Principles of Tahuti, the doctrine of gender for manifesting everything, right? When you understand the feminine gender on the spiritual realm, the feminine gender is more raw and masculine in nature on the spiritual realm of what we term masculine here on the physical. It's reverse. And I find out there's much more power to the divine feminine energy on that perspective. So Callie embodies that and much more. It's nothing to fuck with. That's what I can tell you when you really understand it. There's the sexual energy. There's the destructive energy. But one thing I can attest to in a nutshell: be prepared for the change that Callie brings. When I was saying earlier that this path is about being prepared for the change that you need, not the change you want. Well, Callie is one of those key archetypes that says, Callie's like, look, I don't give a fuck what Callie, you might set out and have an intent to work with Callie in one aspect. Callie might be like, man, fuck that shit. That's not the shit you need. Bam, here's the shit you need, motherfucker. Take this. If you understand that, then you will be open and receptive to working with Callie and understanding it. And I say that based on the question sparked that. So yes. All right. So Duma Ken Rez says, coming from that verse from the book of the Coming Forth by Day. Okay, that was in connection to what we were talking about, the Teddy symbol. Okay. Yes, I mentioned that earlier, only kind of, I guess, after, or no, earlier somebody had typed in, yes, today is what they call the Day of the Dead. And there's a lot of different spiritual things in different parts of the world that are acknowledged. It's a big feast. In Mexico, I know it's huge, dealing with the Holy Dead, Santa Muerte. They have a big feast for the Day of the Dead. As I said earlier, this is a great day to work with the Gay Day, your ancestors, spirits of the dead, crossroad deities, Baron Samedi, Papa Legba, Baron LaCroix, Mama Brigette, any of those deities. that you choose to work with, this is a good energy current to start tapping into them. So most definitely. What else we got? Only type thing. You can move shit with your mind if you channel all your hate, anger, rage, love, pain, fear, strength, all at the same time. This is usually possible after a devastating impact on your life. And that's true. That's the power you have. Okay. We all have, right? Okay. What else we got? So he says, I'm working with eBay and Oya energies today with my egos. Okay. Okay, good, Oni. You've been sleeping with the lights out. Good. Gotta get over that fear of the dark. Peace to OT. Greetings. Sister Stony types and yet working with my Santissima workday to do what make effective change. That's it. There you go. Oni Tyson, you have to be able to face your own bullshit to progress on this path. Lies are unacceptable. Yeah, because really the only one you fool and bullshitting or lying to is yourself, right? That ties into the principle you hear me talk about a lot. Remember, I mentioned this a lot. I mentioned this last week. I've mentioned this many years in many videos. Most of us spend our lives, right, trying to portray ourselves how we want people to see us. And then we have this false illusion of who we think we are. And the only thing that really matters is who you really are. So unfortunately, yeah, you get caught up in that game. So you're only fooling yourself, lying to yourself. Double R is a good question by Double R. Peace. How can numerology tie into these practices? Many different ways. For an example, if you look at some of the archetypes in Vudon or in Ifa, each particular Orishi has paths and there's numbers equated with each particular Orishi. For an example, Allegra's number is threes or any multiples of threes. You can work with 3. You can work with 21. You can work with 49. You'll find in some of the rituals, invocations are done in certain numbers. You can also take that numerology and tie it into astrology, because some of the numerology, when you look in certain spiritual systems, like say Sumerian deities, a lot of them are equated with the solar system and the number of each planet in the solar system and the planetary movements, right? You can tie it into calendars. You can also tie it into birth numbers. Each one of them were birthed at a certain time, quote unquote, as recorded in some of the records into the universe under a certain astrological sign. You could tie that into the numbers of the planets. You could take some of the numbers and add the combinations of them together. Numerology is used. I'll use it a lot in divination. For an example, if I'm reading the cards, if it's shells, if it's runes, each of them have a number. And if I pull something in a number, say it's 3, say another number I pull is 6, I got to look into the hidden meanings of both of those numbers. 3 and 6 individually, and 6 and 3 together, 9, collectively as 9. 9 symbolizes a lot of different things. For an example, in this spiritual system, 9 symbolizes tapping into or opening the porthole, the gate to the black flame. You'll find in a lot of ritualistic work, the bell is the gate or the bell in a lot of these rituals is chimed 9 times because of what 9 represents, right? 9 is the highest number in any system because after 9, it just repeats itself. Because when you look at it 1 to 9, right, then it starts over again. You got the 1 shifts, you got 1, 0, and then it goes 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6, 1, 7, 1, 8, 1, 9. Then it shifts, 1 shifts to 2, and then it goes back to 0. You got 1, 0, 20, 21, 22, 3. You get the point. The point is understanding, first and foremost, what the numbers represent. And now the trick is, right, hidden numerology, for example, in your Bible, right? The biggest trick is, right, they present it on the surface because them fuckers, when these occultists were putting this together and they had an agenda, I'm talking about, the powers that be, right? They said that take hold the number of the beast, for it is the number of man. Its number is 66, 666. Well, the fuckery that they're not getting you, if you take that 6 and turn it upside down, you got a 9. That's what they were really trying to get you to see. But the religious people look at it spooky on the surface. 6 and 9 are the same thing, right? There's no difference between the 6 and the 9 when you really understand numerology, right? 6 and 9 to the occultist are 2 numbers that hold spiritual significance on a lot of different paths, right? I'm just throwing some quick things. Numerology You can connect it on that level, the hidden meanings of the numbers and the symbols and what they represent. You can connect that numerology to astrology. There's another aspect of working with that, planetary movements. So this work is strongly connected to numerology if you decide to take it there or work with it there. Some people don't really mess with it because they have no desire for it. I do incorporate some of it. I wouldn't say I work with it, strongly and consistently. I do utilize it though. In certain situations, I will utilize it if it does come up when I'm doing spiritual readings for people. It will come up because if I'm reading the cards, I will notice a pattern of numbers. And if I'm reading the cards and I see the pattern of numbers, I'll say, wait a minute, why does this person keep getting that number? And then I'll see what number. Sometimes there's another archetype trying to come through and speak and give a message to that individual, even though that card may not be coming up, but it's mapping itself out and speaking through the numbers. So then I might say, okay, they might be using these other archetypes to lead the pathway to them. So I might have to connect it to those archetypes. There's work that must be done with that person in that area, but this is the archetype that's speaking right now. You understand? It's the best way I can explain it in a nutshell. Hopefully that makes sense. I hope I didn't go all over the place. All right. What else we got? Only types in yes, me too. Get stuck in stalking. Yeah, so to piggyback off of what I was saying earlier, you can't talk to anyone about anything if they're always defensive, and acting out of emotion, no doubt. All right, what else we got? All right, so you typed in, okay, people in general don't want to face their shit, even people who are on this path. How can you truly be on this path and not dealing with the illusions that you created? And that's the key. The illusions you created, not the illusions, the victim. One type of person I can't deal with at all anymore is the whiner, complainer / person who's the victim. Everybody did me wrong. They never did anything wrong. They're never responsible. Everybody's out to get them. Be careful of those type of people. They're usually, quote unquote, vampires in the sense that they'll suck the life and energy out of it. We all know those type of people. We get around them just by their bullshit. They drain the fuck out of us. Like, God damn it, this person shut the fuck up. All they do is complain. And you just get so drained being around them because that's a sign that you're adverse to their energy. They're completely adverse to what you really are. And that's, to me, when I get that vibe, that's a motherfucker I'm staying away from. I ain't trying to fuck with them. All right. Another good comment by Sonia, and I think we were having this conversation today, recently. If you're doing work, your shit has been brought to your attention, trust. And I talked about the trust factor, right? Trusting yourself, trusting the process. That's why I was saying earlier, if you're getting results, don't question that. Stop coming behind and say, yeah, I did this, I did that ritual, and I got great results. Did I do it right? Of course you did it right. You did it the way you needed to do it because you got the results. So trust your intuition. Trust the spiritual messages you get that are personal for you. Now, also understand when that happens, just because you're getting personal spiritual messages, don't try to convince everybody else. Because then what tends to happen is people have personal spiritual experiences. Then they try to go convert everybody to their personal spiritual. Remember, it's personal. It's a personal experience. So make it work for you. So we have to learn to trust in ourselves. We don't do that enough. Trust in the messages that you receive because they're for you. They're unique in the sense that they're for you. And that's the key. They're for you. Now, I'm not saying you can't share them with other people, but the only people that are going to connect and relate are people that had similar like experiences. You might share that personal experience with somebody and they might look at you like you're fucking nuts because they just didn't have that experience, and that's okay. So as long as you understand that, where I see people's feelings get hurt, and then people will come to me and I keep it real. They'd be like, yeah, man, this happened this night. Can you relate? And I'd be like, no, I can't. Don't take it personal. Just like I might tell you something I went through, or you might heard me say something on this channel here that you can't relate to. That's okay. I mean, I ain't gonna get mad about it, but we can't, because in relation to two of her comments, Sister Sonia, you gotta be in control of your emotions. Understand, don't get upset when things don't go your way. And two, trust, right? Say that to yourself. Trust in myself. I must trust me. I must trust the process, not the process that somebody else laid out for me, the process that I'm laying out for myself. All that stuff gives you power, it gives you confidence, it gives you strength. These are all the attributes, descriptions, and things that describe being a God. If you claim to be a God or a goddess, well, start acting like it. Stop talking about it and reading about it. A God or a goddess don't complain about shit. Look, here's the thing, man. Everybody's got a story to tell, right? We all have a story we can tell. We all been through shit, right? I could be here telling you the ups and downs of my personal lives, from being a kid to being locked up in jail to getting to all that shit. We all got some story to tell, right? But that's what makes us unique. That's what gives us our character. And we grow from those mistakes. They give us our strength, right? If we didn't go through shit, and if everybody, we wouldn't have or be the person that we are today. Remember, your experiences, they make you unique in the sense that they don't completely define you, but they make up a large portion of who and what you are today. And that also ties into what I was saying earlier. Remember, if you came up through religion and previous systems, like one thing I hear a lot of people say, oh man, I wish I would have knew now. I would have never been a Muslim or this, that. That's not the way you should look at it. It was pertinent for your growth. It's good that you went through that because now you got that experience under your belt. Because now think about it. If you were a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, a Buddhist, you were an Ifo, you now have the experience to educate. Because now when you're talking to somebody that say may not know about the path and may need to get some real knowledge and breakdown on it, you now have that experience. You can share with that person and say, look, I've been down that road, not from reading books. I actually have the experience. Let me share this with you, brother. Let me share this with you, sister. Maybe this will help you. Not because you're trying to influence them to make the decision that you think is right for them. No, because remember, a true teacher, and I tell people this all, I don't tell anybody what to do and what not to do. That's number one. Two, I couldn't give a fuck what you do. I'm not even going to lie to you. I'm not going to sit here like, if you think that I sit around wondering what anybody does, I don't. Three, I also understand people are going to do what they want to do anyway. So a real teacher knows those three principles when they're talking with people, and that's how you approach and teach. My job is if I could share the information and impart on you, and if it helps you to make the decision you need to make moving forward, my job is accomplished. I'm not trying to convert nobody. I'm not trying to tell nobody what to do and not to do. Here's the information. You do what you see fit with it, right? All right, what else we got? Okay, Double R types, and I'm getting together with friends to celebrate Dios de Muerte. This will be my first time celebrating, and it's right on time following my father's death. Thank you so much for your guidance. Well, good. That should be a nice experience. And just to give a little bit of info, I don't talk about clients' personal stuff. I did a consultation work with Double R, so that's what she's talking about. Just so the listeners know, I'm not going to get into it, but. So that'll be a good experience for you. Okay. Oni types in, is it true in candle magic red represents Sekhmet? Well, not just Sekhmet, but yes, if I was doing candle magic working with Sekhmet, I would definitely use red because I've always said in the past, she was the devourer of the gods. She devoured the blood of the gods. And because that blood and red represents so many of her characteristics, passion, things of that nature, yes. But obviously, red can be used in candle magic for Shango. If you're working that type of path, it can be used for Papa Legba, which I'm using that right now. So yes to Sekhmet, but also yes to other archetypes and deities too. That's just a few. What else? So yeah, if you're drawn through to red candles in the past few weeks, you need to really maybe do something a little more intense and passionate if you're getting that vibe. Because remember, one of the key representations of the color red in the occult is passion, fire, strength, even virility, sexual energy too. So all that stuff is connected. Look at Dave Papaneris, Wakanda. That's an inside joke. Fucking Wakanda. Don't get me started talking about that shit. You guys know how I feel about that shit. Wakanda. Wait till they come out with part 2. What do people be doing? They're going to the fucking with their Coming to America hats on, and look how quick that shit died out. Isn't it funny how motherfuckers can fall for the okie doke? You know, a movie comes out, and I told you if you go back, I did a whole video on that. I think it's called
is the Black Panther movie really a black conscious spirit? Some shit like that. I can't remember the title of the video, something like that. Because I was so sick to my stomach when that shit came out. Motherfuckers going dancing in the lobby, wearing dashikis, playing the drums. You needed a movie to do that. It shows how, and then these are the same conscious motherfuckers, the film industry in Hollywood. That's the tool of the devil. All they do is just stereotype black people and just everything. But now all of a sudden, Black Panther came out and motherfuckers was getting the box office red. And that movie made for Disney over $1 billion. And guess what? Disney donated out of that money to, quote unquote. My question I brought to all these conscious coons was, where's that money going into the black community, to black education, to black universities, to black economics, right? All of a sudden you can hear fucking crickets now. The only part of that money that was known, I'm saying, if there was something else I don't know about, maybe so. $1 million went to the Black Educational Fund. That was it. $1 million out of $1 billion. That's like, the crumb falling from the master's table. Here, have a crumb, motherfucker. Like, don't get me started on that shit. Dave, man, you open the porthole, brother. So the Wakanda shit, man. You know how I feel about it. He does that shit intentionally because he knows how I feel about that shit. What else we got? All right, we got some good questions here. Let's see if I can get through them all, if I have the strength. What else we got? Fucking Wakanda. All right. Okay, what we got? Love y'all put in that work. Okay, skip these comments. I'm just going to go to some of the questions. Cool. Yeah. Sorry, Kalima, not for soft, frail people, no doubt. Yes, Maman Brigitte, Mama Muerta, I know you got some work to do with that. Hopefully you get started on that. Double R, I'm interested in working with La Dominadora. I'm getting ready to do something with her. Any advice on how to approach and working with her? Well, remember, in the name itself, it's a very dominating and powerful spirit. It's funny because actually me and Sister Sonia were just in the store and I saw a huge statue of her that I was magnetized by it. And I didn't get it when we were there. And now I kind of regret it. Still have it like magnetized in my head. Remember, very powerful spirit. If you see some of the images with her, remember, she also ties into that serpent energy. Very similar also to Kali. There's a lot of synchronizations there with that energy in Kali. The reason why they call her the dominating spirit is because her energy when activated is very dominant. It dominates everything that it tries to conquer. You'll see her very prominent in 21 divisions. She's very big spirit in what we call Dominican Voodoo, right? I would say understand, and again, I work with green is usually the color you want to work with her, growth and change. A lot of her candles you'll see are green, not exclusively green. But remember, she deals with that serpent energy. It's a very, very powerful, aggressive energy. You can actually activate working with, this particular archetype, for lack of a better word, Dominadora. Again, be very familiar. Some will also see her synchronized with Santa Martha, right? And again, if you're not familiar with some of the Catholic synchronisms, you could get a little bit lost. So I'm trying to come from both. Long story short, just know it's a road clearing, changing type of energy. Very similar to many Sekhmet, Kali. Remember this, and actually I was reading from that, where there's a deity in that that has the attribute Kali attributed to it. I can't remember which one. My point being, know that all of these cultures really have, these are the same deity. They're just synchronized with a different name that ties into their culture. You'll see, quote unquote, what I'm trying to get you to see is there's a Kali aspect in all of these cultures. In this particular one, it would be this spirit. So as long as you understand that and how the energy that it represents, be understanding to know, am I willing to tap into that? Because I know that's the type of energy or change it's going to bring to me. If you understand that, then you're cool. Okay. As far as approaching working with her,
I always recommend, whether it's not just her, anybody, always start out with the basics. What do I mean? Simple, by setting up a little, space for that spirit. Candle magic is always good. A petition with a candle. You could also write on parchment paper things you're trying to accomplish. That always works effective with any archetype, and then fold it up and put it underneath either the image or the candle. And basic invocations. Because what I'm saying, why it's always good to start there and working with her, any spirit or archetype, it'll get you familiar and acclimated with the energy. And then what will start happening is, if that energy is for you and it's something that's going to work and be conducive to you, you will start to create and come up and work with your own shit. You understand? That's the whole thing. So I would start basically with lighting candles, petitioning, invocations. That's the best way to start, in my opinion. And always good to set up a sacred space with the representation of colors, images, because remember, imagery is critical when working with archetypes and spirits. Any imagery as far as colors and symbols always enhance the energy when you're working with that spirit. All right. Okay. Peace to Regina Green. Shaquana McDowell, the knowledge drop is so on point to the work I'm doing. Yes, confirmation. Good. And that's all. That's what we want. We want you to be able to confirm within yourself. All right, looks like we're here at the end. We got a couple more questions, and that's going to wrap it up. Okay. Wow. El Sheba segment. Can't really, but peace. Shaquana McDowell. Yes, working with red candles now. Good. Emperor Phiron. Satililith Witch. Sorry, I'm late. I was working. You ain't got to apologize. You got here when you were supposed to get here. But yes, anyway, red. So here, it's a good thing, because it seems like, not even knowing it, that there's several people here tonight that have been doing a lot of work with red candles. Not a coincidence, because we're in the passion, drive, change. Again, want to leave everybody with this. That's pretty much the end. But I want to leave everybody with this. Remember, it's great. Look how the energy connected. Like I say, one, I didn't plan on even coming on tonight and doing a video. Two, something told me to come on because of the last 3 days. We were dealing with All Hallows Eve, which people know is Halloween. We were dealing with All Souls Day, and now today, the Day of the Dead. And I sense that strong energy, and it's good to see that there's a lot of people doing that there's people here doing some type of work connected with that. That's a beautiful thing. And remember, we are in the equinox, or the time of the year, where you should really gear your work towards doing change within yourself, that you need to fix about yourself. That's my suggestion on work you should be focusing on, because that's the season, quote unquote, that we're in. And the Day of the Dead, it really brings the heightened part of the fall equinox, right? Going into the winter, right? Winter solstice represents the period of darkness, right? It represents the coldest and the longest nights of the year. There's the most darkness in those months of December, January, and February, right? This is a reality. So we're getting ready now to go into, right? We're in the beginning stages of the darkness, right? And that's why I did what I did tonight. Remember, there's a method to my madness, those that know me. I don't just do shit to be doing it. We now going through the darkness. We're getting ready to go to the chaos now, which is that winter solstice, right? And then following that winter solstice will be activation of the dark flame as we go into the spring equinox, which deals with activation of Heka, right? There's a whole science to that. This is the symbology I'm trying to do. I'm not saying you got to approach it exactly like that, but what I would say, get that kind of locked in your mind as kind of a methodology of how you should approach the next several months moving forward. Like I said, for those that are taking the online classes, I will get the book list out to you guys this week. I know I'm a little late behind on that. And what we're doing here, like I say, we will go a little bit in depth. It's a little bit different, but we will go in depth in detail, because the goal of the online classes, they're private sessions, where I know some that took it last session. The goal is you moving forward can now apply these techniques, and you're going to see that the goal is walking and leaving it these classes too that we do here on a YouTube, your objective is where you can walk away from this, getting results, seeing change, but doing it the way you see fit. All right. Anyway, having said that, I should by sometime this week have the flyer out for the end of this month's event, and we are going to be doing what we call the Feast of Set, a mass, black mass called the Feast of Set that we are actually putting together right now. That's going to incorporate the black mass of Set that I wrote sometime last year, and I got input from some of the regulars, Sonya, Brother Jack. We're going to add some stuff to it. So it's going to be, long story short, this ritual will be centered around Set exclusively. Some of the things we got planned going into the new year, something upcoming for the Holy Death. That's been brought to our attention to revisit from things that have happened, especially in the last ritual. So I can tell you those are upcoming. But we'll have that information coming out. Like I say, for this month's event, it'll be November 30th. We more than likely will not do nothing in the month of December. I know that's a busy month. Holidays and things of that nature, people traveling. We might just do something very minuscule here locally. And if somebody's in the area, they're more than happy to come. So more than likely, December will be just a break month. We don't do nothing. And then get back on in January. But November 30th, we will do something this month. Feast of Set. Might not be called exactly that, but that's going to be some shit. Because you know that's my dude right there. That's Set. That's the dude. You know, that's the best thing I can tell you. That's the man right there. That's my shit. And anybody knows me as far as work. That's one of the core energies / archetypes. That is the real, I don't say the prince of darkness. I say the king of darkness. Fuck that prince shit. That's the ultimate king, ruler of darkness. That's that real shit. That's the best way I can describe it. Anyway, I appreciate it. People whoever's enjoying their celebration tonight. I know some of y'all doing stuff with the Day of the Dead. Have fun. If you have recently lost a loved one, it's a good time to connect. Just enjoy it, man. Work with them spirits. Work with them energies. It's what we do. That's what we do. As I said, don't talk about it. Be about it. Peace, love, hair grease, chicken wings, pork chops, whatever it is you need to get you through the day. If you're out there drinking, I know there's a lot of drinking in these celebrations. Be wise. Be responsible. Because, you know, some people can't hold their liquor and that gets them in serious shit. Is what it is. All right. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will talk soon. Peace.